Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome as we launch the 2022 Spotlight series of discussions with young people. I'm Buffy Higgins, CEO to the Duke of Edinburgh Award in the United States. We welcome you from around the globe as the Duke of Edinburgh's Award in the US, Canada, and the Global Foundation present young people and access to the outdoors. We want to frame out why the challenges facing this and future generations is the focus of a year-long series. This is part of the award's advocacy work tied to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Those 17 goals, sometimes called the Global Goals, are a collection of markers designed to give us a healthier and better planet by 2030. Today, we address climate action, life on land, and life below water, as well as reduced inequalities. There's absolutely no denying that the world of today is still reeling after calls in 2020 regarding Black Lives Matters and the calls for increased work to build a more racially just world. Land acknowledgement and reconciliation efforts abound, and we are just beginning to address past and current environmental injustice, both within Indigenous, First Nation, Native peoples, and more widely. Social inequities awareness has extended to addressing the disconnection many feel to the outdoors. We like to think that the award is here to open up those conversations on clean air, open spaces, and safety in the outdoors. Some, like our moderator today, have spent a lifetime working to discover lost histories of who has stewarded wilderness but been left out of the historical record, of connections to environment and conceptions of who adventure can apply to, and of barriers imposed by history, culture, religion, violence, and industrialization, which has separated groups from what we call outside. We want to be part of the hashtag Decade for Action, and we want to be sure that we're showing and sharing with you young people who are taking a lead in increasing access to the outdoors. We truly celebrate their efforts, and we're excited about the panelists involved today. They are thought leaders and they are activists. We also want today to be interactive, so I'm going to be one of many who encourage you to use the question and answer button in Zoom. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Victoria Solano, Director of Development for the award in Canada.
Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Buffy, for that introduction. As we gather today virtually from across the globe to talk about young people and access to the outdoors, it is pertinent that we take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the lands on which we all reside. These lands have been cared for by Indigenous peoples and/or your ancestors for centuries. So let us pause and acknowledge their footsteps and thank them for caring for these shared lands, both in the past and in the present. We cannot have an authentic dialogue about access to the outdoors without honoring Indigenous people and our ancestors for their historic and continued care for our planet. As a global organization, the award is committed to engaging in purposeful conversations that will ensure that all young people have the opportunity to elevate themselves through the award and benefit from the experiential learning it develops and fosters. Through this Spotlight series, we're creating a space that elevates the voices of young people and to discuss the solutions on issues that matter most to them and will impact their future. The award is committed to ensuring that all young people have the skills and opportunities to support the causes that are most important to them. Participants who are passionate about topics such as the environment, social justice, inclusion to the outdoors can all use the reward program to offer voluntary service, develop their skills, but also experience nature in different environments through their adventurous journey and gold project. The Duke of Edinburgh's International Award is a neutral and adaptable tool that can be used by all communities across the globe. We understand it's our responsibility as an organization to locate and reach out to and work with diverse communities to ensure that young people from all backgrounds and life circumstances are equipped to succeed in life. Together, we can build a future where young people's voices are empowered and provide them the platform which not only showcases that they are the drivers on the road, but more importantly, they are building a better future and world by 2030. To frame out and moderate our discussion, we're so lucky to have James Edward Mills join us. author of Adventure Gap, founder of the Joy Trip Project, professor and journalist, Mr. Mills will lead us today on this discussion of access to the outdoors. Welcome, James.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Victoria, first of all, thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is, again, is James Edward Mills, and I'm a freelance journalist and independent media producer based in the ancestral homeland of the Ho-Chunk people in Madison, Wisconsin, in the United States of America. And I'm really pleased to be able to engage in this conversation, specifically with the young people that will be on our panel today. You know, as COVID-19 vaccines are gradually becoming better distributed around the world, it's possible that we can imagine an end to this pandemic. But the world has a long way to go to hopefully get beyond the pandemic so that it ultimately becomes endemic. The restrictions on movement and associations imposed to fight COVID-19 have prevented young people from gaining mental and physical health benefits from being in the outdoors, and from gaining self-reliance and understanding of teamwork, which come from an adventurous journey of their own, and from reduced screen and social media time. Now, it may be hard for us to overcome these habits or omissions, even as all the restrictions have been lifted. Organizations such as ours, which view outdoor activity as a vital part of the non-formal education, will have a vital part to play. Poverty, discrimination, and exclusion from basic services such as health and education were prevalent long before the pandemic hit. Conflicts continue to rage unabated, and climate change is casting doubt on the dreams of our children and grandchildren. Without immediate action, the impacts of COVID-19 on children and young people will persist well beyond the immediate crisis, and long-lasting and in some cases irreversible effects. But with this disruption comes the opportunity for us to rebuild our communities and rebuild the communities that children and young people's rights to reimagine our collective future. You know, if we truly want to have a robust recovery and a fairer future and more equal society envisioned by the Sustainable Development Goals, we must change course, and we must do it quickly. It's vital to our recovery is listening and including young people in the conversation. And so that's why I'm really happy to introduce this amazing panel of young people today. I'd like to begin by inviting each of our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. If you can tell us where you're from, also, and tell us something that you're excited about, especially when it comes to the warm spring weather and hopefully being able to spend time in the outdoors. If you can all turn your cameras on, I'd like to first introduce Mr. Tommy Ferguson.
Thank you, James. My name is Tommy Ferguson. I am based in Toronto, Canada. I am a Bronze Award holder and member of Scouts Canada as a Rover Scout. And I have a few years of experience working in outdoor recreation with children with special needs, particularly neurodevelopmental disorders. What I'm looking forward to most this spring is I've been working on a map of various parks and camps and outdoor locations outside of Toronto that can be accessed by public transport. That is a very big issue for me in terms of accessing the outdoors from an urban setting. And I haven't really had a chance to go out and try and actually put those into practice for a number of different reasons, partially also because of the pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to trying out at least one, maybe 2, 3 this spring and summer. And yeah, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tommy. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Grace Sun.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, James. I'm Grace Sun, and I'm based in Canada. I'm currently a grade 11 and a Bronze and Silver Award holder with the Duke of Edinburgh Award Program. At school, I created a Duke of Edinburgh Award Program Club at school, and all of the members, including myself, has really benefited from the program. This coming spring, I'm really excited to see a plaque that I've advocated for being elevated for a historical architecture that I'm really passionate about.
Awesome. Grace, thank you so much. Next, I'd like to introduce Samaya Cumberbatch.
Hi everyone, my name is Samia. I am 23 years old. I'm from Barbados, and currently I am a student at the University of the West Indies studying meteorology and computer science. I'm also a gold award holder for the Duke of Edinburgh program we have here in Barbados. And what I'm looking forward to most this spring is, well, we don't have spring in Barbados. We're usually hot, like hot and sunny all year round. But finally, our some of our restrictions have been lifted with respect to the pandemic. So what I'm most looking forward to is being outside.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And next, I'd like to introduce Esther Marika Kuraya.
Hello, everybody. Guten Abend. My name is Esther. I'm a German teacher. I am an award coordinator at Nyeri High School. And I'm excited. We don't have spring. What you have for spring is our winter in June and July. But we have an all fair weather all around. We live in the tropics. So I'm excited that the students are able to go again. And with the restrictions lifted, the students can be able to go and just do outdoor activities again. I work with the prison very closely, so the inmates at the Nyeri main prison are also able to go for the expedition without any much. Okay, they already have restrictions, but the COVID restrictions will not be so much. So thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Esther, thank you so much again for being here. And finally, last but not least, Aditi, I'm going to horribly mispronounce your last name, so I'm going to apologize. Can you pronounce it for me, please?
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Aditi Bhojnagarwala. I'm from India and I study in grade 12 right now. And I'm a feminist and I have this organization called Equiarchy where we promote gender equality. And so I live in this metropolitan city, Calcutta, but I have a boarding school in this hill station called Dehradun. So after 2 years, finally my boarding school's opened again, and I'm in my school currently right now. So so I usually used to go for like a small trek during the spring season in the hills of Dehradun. And after 2 years, I think that I might finally be able to do that trek with my friends again. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Awesome. Aditi, thank you very much. Now, I have a series of prepared questions for our panelists. And also, I'd like to encourage members of our audience to put their questions in the Q&A function in the Zoom control panel on the bottom. And just so that we can have what will be hopefully a spontaneous and dynamic conversation, I'd love it if each of my panelists can either hit the raise hand icon in the bottom so I know that you're prepared to give me an answer to the question, or just like in school, if no one raises their hand, I'm just going to call on you. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'd like to begin the conversation by asking each of you, what does the outdoors or wilderness mean to you? And how do you think it's changed in the last 2 years since the beginning of the pandemic? Who'd like to go first? Grace, why don't you start us off?
All right. So as everyone can see, my name is Grace Sun. There's a sun in my name. So naturally, I like spending time outdoors under the sun. For me, the outdoors would mean a place where I can come into direct contact with sunlight and breathe in the fresh air. So yeah.
I mean, has it changed dramatically, or at least being able to spend time in the outdoors, has it changed dramatically in the last 2 years?
I don't think so, actually, because I think the pandemic has really allowed me to actually go more into the environment rather than just stay at home, because I realized that balance during pandemic life is really important for me. So I started to go out more often than pre-pandemic. So yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that because, frankly, I think a lot of us were able to be safer in the outdoors than stuck in
Mhm.
home, inside, indoors. Aditi, you'd raise your hand. Would you like to answer this question as well?
Yeah, so like before pandemic, outdoors for me would usually be something more traditional, like say mountains or rivers. But like during the course of the pandemic, I've realized that even some place near my house, like say a park, which just like provided a break from the monotony of my daily life, was enough of an outdoors for me. So yeah, I think the definition of outdoors has definitely changed for me.
Okay. Esther, did you raise your hand? Would you like to answer this question too?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. For me, the outdoors before the pandemic was fantastic because I am an award leader for young men, and we could go hiking. I've done like pandemic, everything changed because the school curriculum, the calendar of events was restricted. And again, for the inmates also, the inmates are the main prison. Already them, they have restrictions because legally they're supposed to be behind bars. So they also experience a lot of restrictions, but because the one of the freedom that has been denied from them is the freedom of movement. But with the pandemic, now it's even worse because they literally have to stay there and then they have to get vaccinated and then they're allowed to get out. So it's a little bit hard for them and for even my students now because of the school calendar and the legal framework for getting out.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add or something they'd like to share with regard to what the outdoors or wilderness means to you? Tommy?
Yeah, I would say living in a fairly large urban setting prior to the pandemic, I think a lot of outdoor activities were seen as things that happened, kind of in the woods in a national park very far outside of the city. And to get there, it was a very, very planned, very structured activity. And I think with the pandemic, it's allowed myself and a lot of people in cities to realize that a lot of recreation, a lot of outdoor activities can be done outside. And it's, I think, led for certainly myself, and I'm sure a lot of other people, to do things that they did not realize could be done outdoors, such as even doing things like a music rehearsal. I've seen a lot more people bringing their instruments outside into parks, playing outside, and just doing anything that can be done outside because you can't do it inside. And I think that's amazing.
Well, I totally agree. And I think that a lot of us probably made some minor shifts in our lives so we can actually spend more time outside during the pandemic. Now, having said that, how many of you consider yourselves "quote unquote" outdoorsy? And when you say that, how do you define being outdoorsy for yourself? What does that mean to you? Samaya, what do you think? Do you consider yourself outdoorsy?
Okay, I'm traditionally I would have said I'm definitely not an outdoorsy type of person at all. I'm very, what's the word? I don't want to say scornful, but like I was the type of person who would not like sit on the ground outside because of the germs, and that's how I used to be for sure. After joining this program though, that changed because especially when we had to do our adventurous journey, you're so tired after hiking miles. I literally sleep anywhere now. The pandemic, so after I had made that change, and that's I became an outdoorsy type of person, and I really enjoyed it. I look forward to hiking. I am a swimmer, so that's also like really big for me. I go to the beach so frequently. The restrictions of the pandemic changed everything again for me. So because there was a point in time where we were not even really allowed to, like, we were in full lockdown, could not leave home, so couldn't go to the beach. So just things I was used to doing, we just could not do anymore. And it really did make me appreciate outdoors. But yeah, that's my response.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad to know that you are now outdoorsy. What about the rest of you? Who considers themselves not so outdoorsy and perhaps has the Duke of Edinburgh award program changed your perspective on what you consider to be outdoorsy? Esther, you look like you've got an answer to this. What do you think?
Yeah, personally, as a person, as a human being, as a teacher, I'm outdoorsy a lot. And then now when you are a teacher in a boys' school, you become outdoorsy more than that.
Right.
In the superlative. And I think the Duke of Edinburgh really has given my students an opportunity where they are able to just enjoy themselves outside the school. Okay, my school is a boarding school just for boys, all boys boarding school. So they go home after like 3 months. So the expeditions and the adventurous journey really, really, really makes them, they look forward to going for camping. And it's so exciting that most a young person in a boarding school in Kenya looks forward to go home. But the Duke of Edinburgh International Award makes the young men look forward to go for camping first, then they go home. So that's amazing. Yeah, that's really amazing.
No, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And now, for those of you who do consider yourselves outdoorsy, do you have friends who are not? And if you do, how can you encourage them to perhaps join you in your outdoor activities and perhaps become more outdoorsy themselves? Tommy, what do you think?
I would say I personally don't consider myself outdoorsy, and I think that largely taps into just where I'm from, being born and raised in a large city, and generally just saying you go outside and walk in a city is not considered outdoor recreation. So I would say a lot of my friends growing up and even today still wouldn't consider themselves outdoorsy as well. And I also worked at a camp where a lot of people, or a lot of the youth, didn't really get opportunities to be outdoorsy themselves for a number of reasons, be it their socioeconomic or even just simply their disabilities. So from my experience, one of the ways to get people outside is not to throw them in the fire, so to say, not to put them, say, you know, we're going camping for a weekend and this is your first introduction. It can be finding ways or little things that they like to do. And for example, I was able to go skating on a frozen river for the first time with some people last year, and that was something that was cool enough to entice some people to go skating. And in the camp I worked at, I worked a lot with animals and gardening. So finding an animal somebody really liked as a way of getting them to get that experience was super important. So finding something that somebody can dig, can get into, and just very slowly working them into that, and then maybe introducing more things from there depending on their comfort level.
Well, I love that. I think that you hit the nail right on the head when you described making it so that it's not jumping right into the fire. I think there's a lot to be said for easing into these kinds of experiences, and especially if you live in a city where you don't have very many close nearby nature opportunities. And again, those of you who consider yourselves pretty comfortable with the outdoors, have you ever had an experience working with or encouraging your friends to have one of these, I guess, easier access experiences that might help them share your love of the outdoors? Son, Grace, what do you think?
I haven't really had an opportunity where I got to go on outdoor excursions with my friends. Usually they're on school trips, but if I were to have to convince my friends to go out with me, maybe I would choose a place where the greenery is a lot, there isn't that much sun, because although I love the sun, my friends don't a lot.
Right.
But I believe the best way to expose a person to the outdoors is like what Tommy said, not just throw them into the fire at once, slowly ease them in, find points where they're interested in, and then just work on from there. So yeah.
No, I love that. Thank you. Samaya, what do you think?
So I most recently what I actually would have done would have been reaching out to the award office here and the program coordinator. And I told him I wanted to take my best friend and a few other friends out on a hike for her as a birthday surprise for her. So we were doing it as an activity, but I did know that she was gonna fret a lot because she's not necessarily the most outdoorsy person. Does not like exercise at all. So what we did was we kind of planned it, and because hiking is something I still enjoy, and I haven't done it in so long because of the pandemic. So last year I said, at the end of last year, I said we can do something small because it'll just be a group of like 4 of us. Yeah, so then what we did was kind of found the middle ground. So what I would call the middle ground. So hiking for me, but also just making it very easy, like in the sense of, I still wanted them to get the whole experience of reading a map and like using a compass and that sort of thing, but we plot a route in a type of way that it would not be too strenuous. We could cop out at any moment. Like she knew that, everybody knew that from the get-go as well, like it was no pressure. It was literally just to have fun and taking the fresh air, see the cows, because that's what we ended up doing. But that sort of thing. So it's for me, yeah, finding like that middle ground where the two could meet and not making it scary.
No, that's wonderful to hear. And I think one of the other limitations of being able to spend time in the outdoors is not having the right gear, the right clothing, the right footwear, the right equipment in order to be in the outdoors. What do you think we can do as a community to reduce those barriers, to make the outdoors more accessible to people who might just be limited by the clothing or footwear that they have? Tommy, what do you think?
Absolutely. I had that written down as a note quite early on when going through, and from drawing on experience again, because that was an issue I ran into when I started getting into outdoor stuff. Is I didn't come from a family that did a lot of camping, so we didn't have any gear that they could just lend to me or throw at me. And when I joined scouting, first month in, we're going on a weekend hike, and on one hand that was quite intimidating because I didn't have any of the gear, but with communities and with groups like scouting, what can be so beneficial is that you have a whole network of people who do have the equipment, who do have something, and that can be so helpful. And that's how I was able to access the outdoors in those early days, because gear is expensive and it's not always super accessible to people either, because that can often involve going to an outfitter or a store. And even online shopping, only just with the pandemic, has become more and more accessible. So having those communities to share resources, because it also cuts down on the cost for everybody to have that means to share.
No, absolutely. And just the economics of being able to spend time in the outdoors can be a limiting factor. Esther, as an educator, do your students have access to equipment? And if not, how do you provide your boys with the equipment that they need to be successful in the outdoors?
Thank you, James. What I can say is that sometimes we have, what I do after every expedition, I make sure I start preparing for the next expedition by getting the gear together, asking some parents who can afford to, if your son is going out and you can afford to donate some stuff for another boy who is in need, then I go out of my way as a teacher and use my influence as a teacher to get equipment for the students. And then in Kenya, we have something called the Compass Project, where we have gotten some donation from Mr. Moho Kenyatta. He has given in different schools, a few schools, he has given us some bags, sleeping bags. So for me personally, what I've learned over my 12 years of running an award is that after every expedition, I start planning for the next expedition in terms of preparation of the equipment and the camping gear for the students who are less needy, who are less fortunate. And if I get somebody to fundraise for me, if I get some place where, for example, I go to the secondhand shops to get some hiking shoes, I just ask them, can you subsidize can you donate some and then can we buy at a subsidized rate? Yeah, we do that. But for me, if a student doesn't have the right camping gear or the outdoor shoes, for me, I just tell you, come as you are. We shall deal with injuries. if you get injuries, I want you to experience more than, you don't have to be perfect. Just come the way you are. We will work with what you have. Yeah. So that's what I do as a teacher. Thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you. Aditi, you're probably the youngest person on this panel, and I'm kind of curious. I mean, how do you access the outdoors? Do you have supportive parents? Are there people in the community that help you to spend more time in the outdoors? What are your points of access to enjoy the outdoors?
I think being in a boarding school has really helped me access to the outdoors because, again, as I said, my boarding school is literally on a mountain. So our school would usually take us out for at least one trek a year. And I've been in my boarding school since I was 10. So I have this regular habit of like going to the outdoors. And when you go out with your friends, it's usually fun. Like we're a batch of 80 people and we used to all go out together camping and or something new to do each time. So I think again linking our education system to access to outdoors to the young people can be really beneficial because um, that not only gives them a holistic educational experience because you learn a lot when you're in the outdoors, but like yeah, inculcating it from a younger age does definitely help.
That's terrific, and that's actually an excellent point. It's great to start early. And especially when you have the very positive experiences as a young person. Can you imagine, though, if too many of us don't have those early experiences? What do you suppose would happen if a majority of the population one day didn't have positive experiences in the outdoors? What would happen if there weren't an entire generation of people? Let's say when you all get to be the age where you're old enough to vote and you don't have the ability or the interest in spending time in the outdoors, and all of your friends have that same point of view. What will the world look like? It's a hypothetical, but what do you think? What would the world look like if we had not enough people who had positive relationships with the outdoors? Grace.
I think there's a phrase that really suits this type of situation, actually. I think it's called people are being played slave with the familiar and being scared with the unfamiliar or like the new. I think that phrase would really apply to the situation because, of course, being under a roof with 4 walls, of course, you would feel very safe, but sometimes you would feel that maybe the familiar will sometimes be a little too not that interesting anymore. So I think that if maybe if that in that hypothetical situation, if people are willing to actually go outside, I think if you learn something new about something and then you find that this is so much more different, but it's also so much more cooler, then there's also the thrill of experiencing something that is it dangerous? I'm not sure. Let's go find out more. I think people might become addicted to the fact of getting outside. I actually went through a period of that during like the first 2 months of the pandemic. I started going outside. I went on walks every day. So I think their situation might apply a little similar to like my first 2 months of the pandemic. So yeah.
Aditi, you raised your hand. What do you think?
Yeah, like if we talk about India, I know that a large section of the Indian society is very backward in the socio-economic sense. So they don't, so like even in the current state, not many people actually have access to the outdoors. It's only the very limited privileged class in India which actually has access to the outdoors. And like the economics of it is like a big factor because people are literally struggling for like 2-3 meals a day. But also like various factors come in, like there's this thing called caste, which is basically the Hindu religion divided into many sectors. So it's different for people belonging to different castes and their socio-economic status. So I feel like even in today's world, actually, at least in India, not many people have access to the outdoors. And that's a pretty sad situation to be in because people are missing out on a very important and valuable resource. So I think that should be it.
Yeah. And I think there's, I mean, especially in Canada, there's a movement to make access to the outdoors a human right, that it is something that you are entitled to, just the same way that you should be entitled to fresh air and clean water and open space. Can you imagine passing legislation in your respective countries to make that a requirement? And how would you do that? How would you make access to the outdoors a human right? Samaya, it looks like you've got the wheels turning in your head. I can see you've got an answer
I
to this.
do, but you're asking some really hard questions. You are, how would we make that a human right? That's an amazing question. But apart from like actually answering the question, I did want to say that I completely agree with it being a human right. I think everybody should have access to the outdoors because just in terms of my personal experience, having access to an easy access to the outdoors can be amazing for your mental health. Like when you're going through anything, I think that's why it was so difficult for so many people as well, to just be cooped up at home during lockdown. You kind of felt like you were losing your mind, like you just wanted to go outside and breathe in some fresh air and, hear the birds chirping uninterrupted by cars driving past every 2 seconds. So I do really think though that everybody should have like equal access to the outdoors because it literally can do so many wonders for you as a human being. But I have no idea how I'd make that a human right.
Well, I think for starters, I mean, we recognize the importance of this. I mean, could you imagine if they started charging you for air? If you literally had to pay someone money in order to breathe, we would never let that happen. Or gosh, I sincerely hope that we would never let something like that happen. But the access to the outdoors could be very much the same way. It's critical to our health and well-being as human beings. Tommy, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I know the question is coming from the statistic that typically people who don't have the opportunity to experience the outdoors don't tend to vote and look at economic or climate based policies in platforms and campaigns. So I think from that perspective too, because climate change is a very big topic for everybody, but particularly the younger our demographics, playing it as a environmental stewardism issue would be a way to get people to feel maybe not obliged, but compelled to experience the outdoors or get outside as a means for helping and contributing to fighting climate change. The concern in that, though, is that if you start promoting, say, the idea that you're trying to see things before climate change maybe kills them or just makes them disappear, that also can bring the issue of, say, over tourism or over stressing the land. So that goes back to playing it as a stewardism and as a sort of your duty or your obligation as a citizen on the earth to help keep it I guess accessible and habitable.
Right. I mean, and that accessibility is critical. But it's really interesting because this year and the year before, during the pandemic, the adventure portion of the award was made virtual. And so many of the experiences were actually had on digital platforms and letting technology play a much more vital role in having that adventure experience be possible. What do you think about that? I mean, what happens if the only experiences that we could have might be virtual? At the end of the day, do you think that that's a good idea so that we at least have something? Or is it a dangerous precedent that might do infinitely more harm than good by having too many outdoor experiences online and on the computer? What do you think? It's a tough question, I know, because who would imagine something like that would happen? But here we are. Esther, what do you think?
Personally, my personal opinion, the same way we can't have the same way we struggled last year and the last 2 years about having Christmas and Thanksgiving, the same way we cannot have them virtually. I think that we need to give outdoor experiences the same respect, because a virtual Christmas is not like you feel like there's something that's missing. So even a virtual outdoor, yeah, something is really missing. So in my view, I think for the outdoor really needs to be, we can strike a balance between having a little bit of virtual, but then we as gradually we revert back to a real adventurous journey. However, for the back to the people who I really cherish in my heart, the inmates at the prison, for them, I mean, they cannot have a virtual expedition, because they really need to actually go out, and they already, for them, they are like they're already restricted. It's like they have double restriction, that they are legally not allowed to move. So having virtual is for them. Let me tell you something, James. The inmates really find it, the expedition, the adventurous journey for them is like a privilege, because the inmates I work with are in a maximum prison, and for them, going out of the prison is already like something, an opportunity, something to look forward to. Even if the expedition is done with maximum security, they have extra officers to guard them, then they actually do their expedition and they go back to the way we do expedition, and you sleep in the camp, then they have to literally go back to the prison. So a virtual expedition would really do a disservice to them. Yeah, that's my view.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy, what do you think?
I think like a lot of things that have gone virtual increasingly with the pandemic, there's an upside and a downside.
Right.
The interesting upside when I was doing the virtual award was we had a member on our team who had a combination of disabilities, and using the virtual trails and virtual explorations gave that person an opportunity to see and do a lot of things that they may not otherwise be able to do for a number of different reasons pertaining to those abilities. So that, I think, was a really great upside for that. Another great upside is it gave me exposure to certain parks and trails in Canada that would be feasible for me to do. And now they're on my list of things to get around to doing it, hopefully at some point. So from those two perspectives, the exposure, largely that's a really great upside. I certainly agree with the downside that it means that you're doing what should be an outdoor activity indoors. And I think that's the biggest downside to that. But I think instead of going hard one or the other, having that middle ground or striking a balance based on what people are comfortable with and can do is super important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you very much to my panelists for answering my questions. I'm really excited to know that we've got audience questions from the audience that I'd like to take the remaining time having you respond to now. And just to go through in order, in no particular order of importance, I'm curious, we have one audience member who's curious to know if you can suggest one small way people can spend more time in the outdoors, what would it be? If you have someone who has limited capacity, they don't have the ability to spend much time in the outdoors, what is the one thing that they can do to hopefully perhaps begin a relationship with the outdoors if they don't currently have one? Aditi.
So like during the pandemic, I made sure that I would go out to cycle at least 1 hour a day. So maybe making such scheduled free plans could be a beginning, because often people become lazy by the time they actually have to go outside. So if you have something pre-planned for like a daily basis, it gives you a push, and then you can maybe extend.
Right. So start with 1 hour and maybe turn that into an hour and 10 minutes. And then later an hour and a half. And the next thing you know, you're spending all day outside. Excellent suggestion. Grace, did you raise your hand?
Yes. Basically for personally, my way to, at the beginning of the pandemic, I decided to first write homework outside in my yard because I found out that I think I read this scientific article that doing things in the fresh air and under the sunlight, an environment that you like doing it, you reach a your efficiency basically goes up. And after reading that article, I decided to try it out, and it actually worked a lot. It worked really, really well. So starting from that, I decided to go on hikes because of the adventurous journey, the virtual adventurous journey hosted by Duke of Edinburgh. And after starting doing the hikes every day, I found out that I really, really liked going outside and spending more time. And because of the hikes, I also found a new hobby of mine, which is nature photography. So because of that, every time I go outside, I would take pictures of different types of nature in different types of seasons. I took a course at school, which was graphic design. And because of the photos that I took, I incorporated them into my various assignments. And I got the high score in the grade for that course. So I was really happy to just being able to go outside and also getting something really, really good for my physical body and also for my mental health as well. So yes. So yeah.
Wow. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that you've taken up photography. You must have a great Instagram feed.
I don't update that Instagram. I don't update my Instagram that much.
I would encourage you to, and I look forward to seeing your pictures because I'm sure they're amazing.
Thank you.
So here's another question from the audience. Access varies based on geography, and sometimes there's things like stigma and gear and knowledge and income. How can your generation work towards a majority of your peers being stewards and defenders of the outdoors? I mean, how do people from your generation ultimately encourage each other, perhaps, to spend more time outside? What can we do to make that happen? How do we remove barriers to adventure? Anybody? Tommy.
My personal passion has been public transit and utilizing transportation routes that already exist to get people outside, because driving is prohibitively expensive, especially if you're in a big city, and not a lot of people can afford an access to an automobile. So promoting that as a means to get outside, and the BC government has done a really great job with that. They have a campaign called Explore BC by Bus, and that just puts a lot of the major transportation routes in British Columbia right on a website. So you just have to go to that website and see everything, because that's another issue with transit, especially in North America, is not a lot of it is straightforward and not a lot of it is obvious. And that makes it very difficult to use. And that makes a lot of people say, well, I'll just pay the premium for a taxi or an Uber, or rely on my friends to drive me around. And that makes it harder for you to independently explore if you don't have that access consistently, because that's also prohibitively expensive and difficult to utilize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, public transportation, I think if we can remove the barrier of just getting there, that makes the outdoors much more accessible. Anyone else? What are other ways that we can remove barriers to the outdoors? Grace, you had your hand up, or actually Esther, please.
For my students, what I tell them to take as much when they go out, they have to make outdoor look attractive to their age mates, and they take as much pictures and post the photographs and show. The good thing about Kenya, we really have, for us, outdoor is amazing, and the weather is good all around. So we don't have like snow, we don't have like some heat wave or anything. So we really have very good weather. So I always encourage my students to, when they are out, they take photographs, they make videos, then they put them out so that they make another young person who is sitting down in the house all day to see that they're missing out on adventure, on seeing butterflies and going out and doing the outdoor. So that's one of the things I encourage them, because their generation, I always tell them, if they're not able to document such things, then they're going to be having a generation where they spend their whole time indoors, and outdoor will be a thing of the past. So yeah, they need to document them a lot. Yeah.
Right. Again, just like Grace, taking pictures and sharing those pictures whenever possible. Now, all of you are Duke of Edinburgh Award winners. I'm curious to know, and this is a question from the audience, what would you say would be the most useful support that youth organizations and outdoor centers can provide youth to work on their award? You know, did you get any special help, or is there anything that you would have liked to have had from organizations or centers in your community? Samaya.
Hi. So one of the things that I recall from Barbados's program is that the program has partnerships with lots of different places. So I think one of them, for example, might be like the Aquatic Center. Persons can learn to swim. They have, I think there's another partnership with along those way with someone who facilitates archery lessons. So, because one of the requirements of the program is to develop a skill. And of course, you would want that persons are able to access, the different skills. So what the program here is based on all the relationships they have formed. The cost of actually like attending the classes for the skill are actually like subsidized heavily. So that you pay like essentially next to nothing. And honestly, if you're in a position where you're not able to afford it, I believe that you can always go the avenue of, letting the coordinator know, and then the program should be able to like sponsor in a sense so that you can still access it like everybody else. And there are certain skills, if I do recall correctly, that were also free through the program. So once you did it, you're in the program and you're trying to do it as part of your award, you'll be able to access it in that way. So I think that particular thing, the partnerships with like different organizations, institutions, is honestly, I think that was so useful. And I don't know if other award programs anywhere else have it, but I think that was one of the biggest things, having the partnerships with people so people would be able to have access.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to know that happens. Grace, what do you think?
I believe for the Duke of Edinburgh to complete a full award, there's 4 components. There's skills, physical recreation, and voluntary service. Specifically for voluntary service, I had the hardest time finding a place to volunteer for, but I realized that I could go to retirement centers and also community centers and or community health centers, because currently I volunteer for a community health center. And I basically go on Zoom calls with them every week. And I just teach them how to use technology, etc. And I just talk with them every week. And I found that this is a great way to basically just complete your award. And also at the same time, also just gain some kind of perspective on how different types of, I guess, just social jobs work in basically their different types of communities. But for the adventurous journey component, I found that after basically just creating a club at school, you got to have like a collective community where you were able to share your ideas and different types of opportunities. So I think having a group of people to look out for you and also just help you with different components of your award really, really helps in this type of situation. And also in the pandemic, it's also good to have a collective community just be there for you when your spirits are kind of low. So yeah.
No, that's wonderful to hear. In the last minutes that we have, can anybody share with me what you got out of the award? I mean, was there a transformation, or is there anything substantively different for you today now that you're an award recipient prior to your having started the work to earn the award? What changed for you? What's different now?
I started going outside. That was one. But also just creating a club at school, it allowed me to have exposure to so many different kinds of people I didn't know at school. I also got so many new friends from them, which is also a really good thing.
Great.
And I think that just being able to do the award really allowed me to just maintain different types of hobbies and interests I like to do. And because of the award, it gave me kind of like a sense to you should continue doing what you enjoy doing because of this award. So I thought that it helped me get through it helped me basically maintain a lot of my skills and hobbies and interests during the pandemic.
That's
This award is really a really great accompaniment for a youth when you're just like when you want to find something to maintain and just practice it just what if you just want to see how good your endurance is for something, and you also get an award out of it, so it's really really good.
nice. Aditi, why don't you finish this up? What would you like to share?
I feel like the award requires you to maintain a regular record of like various activities that you're doing. So you don't really end up procrastinating about everything because you know that, okay, it has to be done. So it gives you this kind of push and it helps you discover like a lot of different arenas. So you need a co-curricular and you need an adventure sport sort of a thing. So it really opens up your own personality and it gives you the push to be regular about it and not just give up on it like after a few days. So that really helps.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you everyone so much for being with me today, tonight, this evening. It's been wonderful meeting you and getting to know each of you. Good luck with your future. I honestly feel that the whole world is better off today because of everything that you've accomplished with what you've done. Enjoy the rest of the winter months in North America, the great year-round weather in Kenya and Barbados. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being in the audience today. I'd like to close this conversation out and wishing you peace and prosperity in the months and years to come. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. That was such a great discussion. I don't know if anyone's still there. Hopefully.
Thank you
There
so
was
There
a-
we
much.
go.
Everyone. Oh, we're still live on YouTube, Ida. Would you mind